In terms of your respective countries, let's start New Zealand, Malaysia, the United States, Palestine. Just give us a bird's eye view of the progress or lack of it, of understanding and movement with BDS in your respective countries.
Well, first of all, can I acknowledge also the Indigenous people of the land? It is our practice in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to acknowledge the people who have gone before, the people who are present, and also the future. And Māori have a wonderful phrase, which is Tihei Maori ora, and it means behold the breath of life. And that is when people press noses together, when they meet one another, they are passing that breath of life between each other. And I think it's particularly apposite today, having heard the expressions of solidarity with the Indigenous people of Australia and with Palestine, and also here, represented by not only me, but my colleague and partner in all sorts of actions, Don Carson, and I see Nigel Parsons from New Zealand too. But briefly, and of course all of us can go on for a long time here, the BDS, I mean, I've been involved for 30 years from the early 80s, and so like Saba was saying, the change has been extraordinary. And I have to say that one of the most significant things that has changed is the connection with the Māori people and their understanding of the solidarity that exists. And there are all sorts of connections being made personally between different activists in New Zealand, Māori activists, and the locals in different parts of Palestine. But also out of the anti-nuclear movement, which New Zealand stood very strongly against the United States and against its partner in the ANZUS Treaty with Australia, and said no nuclear ships in New Zealand. That was very powerful for a uniting force within New Zealand, and nobody would suggest that anything in New Zealand can be anything but nuclear free now. National Party, your equivalent Liberals, said that it would be gone by lunchtime if they got into power in 2005. Well, they sunk that, and never has that policy emerged again. Interestingly, at the same time as the BDS emerged. The anti-apartheid movement was extremely strong, and Don, I'm sure, will be reflecting on that. But I think that those things have been very powerful. And so the BDS movement has had its wins in New Zealand, and it is gaining attention, and we have had some successes. I noticed in the little booklet that appeared, that I've read through briefly, about the Dead Sea products. They've gone from New Zealand. We had flash mobs appear. And it coincided with a TV personality noting that the people who were selling these products were actually gaining visa-free status, as Israelis do, to visit New Zealand as tourists, but they then began working. And that was in contravention to our law. It was also being organised by a person who exploited these young people, and that then led to this disaffection and really hounding out of the Dead Sea products from New Zealand. We've had the Jerusalem Quartet playing, and we in New Zealand have felt very strongly that one of the ways to get through to the supporters of Israel is through the arts, because of their particular sensitivity and pride, naturally, for a lot of their expertise. I don't want to, am I going too long? Okay, we've had the Jerusalem Quartet haven't appeared again since the Bachiva Dance Company, the tennis player, Shahapir, appeared in 2009. We protested 2010. She appeared again. She hasn't appeared again since. And she was then blocked from being part of the Dubai tennis tournament. Some of us were arrested on that time, but it made a thing. What else? Caterpillar, we've protested. We've got the New Zealand Super Fund and to divest some of there, but we're working on that one too. So look, there's some of the successes, and so it's coming on.
I'm going to ask you several questions, so you don't have to give everything in answer to the first question. Nazari.
Thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you to everybody who made it possible for me to come and participate today, this morning, in this conference. Now, with regard to what's happening in Malaysia, as you know, Malaysia as a country do not recognize Israel. We don't have any diplomatic relation with Israel. On my passport, it says that I can travel anywhere in the world except for to go to Israel. So the country is very explicit. But interestingly, you may want to know that the government does not like the word boycott. So even though the country does not have any diplomatic relationship with Israel, nevertheless, the BDS movement is not getting the full-hearted support by the government. They don't want to talk about boycott, and that's probably political and economic reasons behind it. The people, the Malaysian people are solidly behind us. In fact, they are sometimes over-enthusiastic. For example, they want to boycott companies like McDonald's, even though we told them with BDS, we are working with BNC and we are very selective, the companies that we choose to boycott. But they say, we cannot boycott Caterpillar because we don't buy Caterpillar machines, right? We don't. So I explained to them where there is HP and other companies. We work with us together, but they are too enthusiastic. They want to boycott McDonald's, they want to boycott L'Oreal, they want to boycott so many other consumer products because they want to be part of the boycott movement. So that's a challenge. We found recently a supermarket was importing pants from Israel. So we say we want to boycott. We make sure that there were Palestinians who were working with us, and we said this is from a company in Israel. We told the company, we said that this is from Israel and you better not sell this. And immediately they withdrew the whole product from throughout the country because they were scared of the consumer backlash against them. So the people are solidly behind us. But the government is a bit different. So for example, Caterpillar is being sold by a government-owned company. HP is being bought by the government for machines in the government departments. And we have been trying to give presentations to the government, to departments, but we are not getting the recognition. We are not entertained by the government. There is something there because I think they are scared of the economic repercussion because the American government, I think, will be quite upset at Malaysia for promoting boycott, and they're scared. And because our exports, a lot of our exports go to America, electronic exports, and they don't want to jeopardize that. There's a last story maybe to share with you, the dilemma facing Malaysians because the economic situation, everybody wants jobs. I organized a speech by Peter Slizak in Penang, and the Deputy Chief Minister was very happy to welcome us. And then he saw that in the list that we are advocating is Hewlett-Packard. But Hewlett-Packard has got a big plant in Penang, employing thousands of people. And he was in charge of industries. The Deputy Chief Minister is in charge of industry and attracting foreign investment. So he was in a difficult situation. So first he said, okay, we welcome Peter Slizak to give a speech, but the BDS will be struck off as organizer. So I was supposed to give a speech together with Peter Slizak, but I was not welcome to give a speech. Never mind, I sent Peter Slizak there anyway to give a speech, and the Deputy Chief Minister treated him well, accompanied him to the airport and sent him off, but he didn't want to talk about HP because HP is a very big employer and very big contributor to the economy of Penang. So this is the dilemma facing us, Malaysia, because economic development, jobs is very important. And so far, sadly to say that the feeling of sacrifice it's not up to the level yet, which I think probably most of you here are better in that sense compared to some Malaysians. Thank you very much.
Okay, at risk of appearing on a Trump Twitter, Yousef, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be with you all and to see this great turnout at the conference to talk about this important issue. I will be discussing at length this evening a lot of what is going on in the United States in a talk on how we progressed towards sanctions in the United States during the tenure of a Trump presidency. So I will try not to focus too much on that, but just kind of give you a general update of where we are in terms of progress on BDS in the United States in recent years. You know, from the perspective of where we've come from, we've made a tremendous amount of progress. The kinds of victories that we see today in the United States are truly inspiring. This year, most recently, I believe we've seen the 10th mainline denomination of the Protestant Church in the United States take some form of economic action by adopting a resolution. So that's been amazing to see. And also the way in which these battles play out are also inspiring. There was a time in which the debates on the floor of these convenings would be very, very contentious, and we would be worried that there may not be the votes in the room to pass a resolution, or if it passed, we may barely see 50%. But most recently, at the last last convening in which a resolution was adopted, it was over 98% of the people who voted that supported the adoption of the resolution. And last year, for example, we saw at the Evangelical Lutheran Church similarly high numbers, 80%. So this is no longer a controversial idea in many spaces. However, there are still a lot of spaces where we need to make a lot more progress. And from the perspective of where we want to go, we still have a lot of work to do. I will be discussing tonight in particular the challenges that we face with the politics that Trump has brought in. But I will also discuss some of the opportunities that present themselves because of that. And I will just briefly mention, because it was discussed earlier, and it is something that I was working on very intensely just before leaving Washington, D.C. earlier this week, is the effort to confront the anti-BDS legislation that is manifesting itself across the United States. We've seen resolutions in various states, but also at the federal level. And the gentleman that pointed out earlier that this might be, the moment that helps kind of move the movement for Palestinian rights in the United States forward, I think there's something to that, and I will be expanding on that this evening. But the efforts that we are seeing today are a threat to, try to intimidate and silence activists. But at the same time, they are also a reflection of the degree to which the movement has grown and has succeeded in the United States. Because if it was not making the progress that it is making, you would not be seeing this sort of reaction. And we see that not just as it happens in state and federal government, but also in the various arenas where it takes place. The recognition that the movement is growing is there. So I'll stop there, but obviously I have plenty of more to share tonight.
Thank you very much. Okay, for somebody who escaped Gaza in somewhat dramatic circumstances, Shamikh.
Thank you, Stuart. Before I speak about my experience, I would like to talk about the experience of Palestinians in boycotting the Zionist movement and Israeli occupation. And Palestinians used this method of struggle for a long time. They started to use this method in 1911, and Najib Nassar, who is Palestinian activist, who called the Palestinians to boycott Zionist products and Zionist movement. And in the Palestinian Revolution in 1936, Palestinians also used this method against British occupation and against Zionist movement. And honestly, Palestinians, they have very good and important experience, because when Palestinians boycott the Zionist movement, it is important for them to find alternative product. So they started to build organizations and institutions like after 1967, also the Palestinians have very good experience in building the organizations in order to be able to boycott Israeli occupation. Also, in 1987, at the first Intifada, Palestinians stopped paying the tax for Israeli occupation, and I remember that when I was in Gaza. Also, they boycott Israeli products, and they succeeded to reinforce the Sumud. I think all of you know the meaning of Sumud. And the problem after the Oslo agreement, and we thought when I was in Gaza, we liberate Gaza, but later we realized that Israeli occupation left the cities and still imposed the siege around Gaza. And in this period, I remembered the Israeli products were everywhere in Gaza, and people started to buy Israeli products because Palestinians were cheating from this process about peace process, because Israeli occupation exploited that. And later we realized we can't be able to achieve peace as long as Israeli occupation is still building settlements. Now, in 2005, the Palestinians and international activists succeeded to have like the BDS campaign, international campaign, and it is important for Palestinians to have like this campaign, especially when we are talking about Gaza now. 10 years, people in Gaza are suffering from the illegal siege, and during this period, Israeli occupation and Israeli army invaded Gaza 3 times. Around 6,000 people were killed. And when we are talking about why you want to boycott Israel, it is easy to say because Israeli occupation, violating human rights, killing people. We are not against religion, we are against apartheid regime. Also, it is important in this conference to discuss the future of BDS. For example, how we can lobby the Western countries to stop the military ties and cooperation with Israeli military cooperation with Israeli occupation, because this cooperation encourage Israel to continue the violation of human rights. Also, it is important to lobby the Western countries and to prosecute the leaders of Israeli occupation who commit violation of human rights when they visit Europe or Australia or around the world. I think in this conference we should to talk and discuss how to lobby the ICC, International Criminal Court, to prosecute the Israeli leaders. I think in this way we can be able, our campaign to be more effective, and it is important to think how to refute the Israeli claims against the BDS. Thank you.